thought we would begin with the creative process behind Oxygene 3. Given that there were two previous albums, how did that impact your approach when constructing the new pieces?
Well, it's quite fun because when I did the first Oxygene, the idea behind the album was to approach an album a little bit like a book or like a movie, with different parts where the different tracks would be not separate songs, but like different chapters of a book. And while I was doing it, I thought it could be fun in my life to think about sequels and series. I always loved sequels in literature, in movies, on TV, and it doesn't exist that much in music. I think it could be fun to create different seasons, and actually Oxygene 3 is season 3 in a sense. A few years later, after having done this massive project Electronica involving lots of collaborators, traveling all over the world and working with lots of different people from the electronic music scene, from M83, Moby, and Massive Attack, Pete Townsend, Tangerine Dream, and Air, and Gesaffelstein, Fat Buttons, and lots of different, Vince Clarke from Depeche Mode, and lots of different artists. I suddenly said that it could be cool to go back in studio like I've done for my first album, and I did the first one in 6 weeks. So I locked myself up in 6 weeks in studio with a minimalist equipment, and just to try to not by listening the two first ones, but just by going back to this kind of sunny and dark atmosphere that the first Oxygene carries. I did the first one obviously in vinyl days, and I said it could be fun to sing this album in with two sides really, and also because of the kind of renaissance of vinyls, I think it would be quite fun. And then I conceived the side one in more dark, and side two more melodic and more brighter or more with more light, I would say.
How did you avoid repeating yourself?
This is a very good question, because I think that what I tried to do is actually not by not repeating myself, but actually not listening to the first one, because I thought that keeping more the atmosphere and the concept rather than going into the melodies and the parts and all this. And also, I would say, I said, okay, if I had to do Oxygene today, I would not use necessarily the instruments I used 40 years ago, because I by definition I wouldn't have them. So I really approached that I approached this by limiting myself with some analog instruments, hardware, and also some plugins, like if I was starting in 2016,
Well, let's contrast that with the collaborative approach you took on the giant Electronica project.
The Electronica project started with the idea of gathering around me some artists linked to the electronic scene, one way or another, who are a source of inspiration to me for quite a while, and through generations. So it came from, as you said, from Massive Attack to Tangerine Dream to M83, Moby, Gesaffelstein, Air, Pete Townsend, Cyndi Lauper, Laurie Anderson, and Vince Clarke from Depeche Mode and Pet Shop Boys, and lots of different Hans Zimmer also, and John Carpenter even. All these people for me are part of my family in a sense, musical point of view. And so I approached them, and I've been really surprised that they all said yes, and I ended with more than 2.5 hours of music. So it took me almost 5 years to complete the project. And actually, the two dogmas, the two principles I had was, first of all, meeting the people face to face and sharing the creative process physically in their studio, in their environment or mine. And secondly, to be able to also write a piece of music, a demo, in function of the preconceived idea I had regarding their work or regarding themselves, even if it's not who they are. I mean, but it was, I mean, this piece of music for me was representing the idea I have regarding who they are. And it was, but also leaving enough space for them to express themselves. And they've been very generous by sharing their time, sharing also, electronic music is very strange because we are like writers or painters in our atelier, and we are not sharing that often the kind of creative process in the same room. So it's quite a real initiation journey for me.
Now, you created a piece of music with Edward Snowden called Exit, of course. I'd like to hear your thoughts about how you feel music can uniquely comment on critical issues of our time, in a way that other art forms can't.
It's a very interesting question. I think that any kind of art and musical movement are always by necessity and obviously the reflection of the society in which those movements exist. It was true for jazz, it was true for rock and folk with protest songs, and today electronic music being one of the most influential and the most popular movements in the world. It's pretty normal that you can consider this movement on two sides. I mean, on one side is the hedonist part, where you like to dance and dancing and having fun until the end of the night, and the other side being more social probably. And one of the recurrent themes of Electronica is this ambiguous relationship we have regarding technology. On one side, we have the world in our smartphones in our pockets, with our smartphones in our pocket. On the other side, we feel that we are spied on by the outside world. And the idea, for instance, to collaborate with Edward Snowden is not a musician, but actually I've been really moved by him. In a very strange way, he reminded me to my mom. My mother was a great figure in the French resistance, and I've been told by her that when the power in place is generating ideals or facts which may harm the community, and we had to resist in a sense. And then I decided to approach Edward to try to do a piece of music together, and I discovered a very interesting young man, a patriot, a man who loves his country, and also really fond of electronic music. I mean, in Electronica we all geeks, but definitely he's the pro. and then we decided to do this track together, where it could be a kind of quite a wild techno track. I mean, symbolizing this kind of mad quest that we have and the world has for more and more data and the quest for big data. And there is a breakdown in the middle where I went to Moscow to record him and to film him, and there is a kind of in the track there is a breakdown, on which he's just talking and just saying a few sentences, resuming the reason why he did what he did.
Now, it wasn't the first major political statement you made. I'm curious how you look back at the concerts in China and the cultural and political doors those events opened for the world.
I think, I think as musicians, we are not politicians, we are not scientists, but we through our music we can sometimes helping soothing some situations or some dark situations. And when the first time I went to China, it was just after Mao's time. It was quite tough, and I've been the first Western musician to play just after Mao's time. It was like playing on the moon, actually, and I would never forget the intense and intense mood and the intensity of the encounter. It was really very strong. And I'm just coming back from Israel just a few hours ago, where I went there to play at the Dead Sea in Masada, and because I'm UN ambassador for UNESCO for environment for 25 years now, and the Dead Sea is a good example because you're asking me the question. It's the Dead Sea is losing 1 meter per year. It's an ecosystem like the North Pole or the Amazonian forest. So and nobody is taking care of it. And I again, as a musician, I think we know how making noise and just making noise and can contribute to increase awareness. And we know that awareness always lead to action. And then it was a fantastic outdoor concert. It was fun. It was very dynamic, but also contributing to help one to maybe to solve in the future one quite dramatic and dark situation in which this region is, for instance. So it's a mixture where again I think music, and it was true for jazz. It is true for jazz. It is true for rock and for electronic music. I think may help sometimes or being linked with some social context.
Now, your shows are obviously enormous, and they're very engaging. I've been lucky to see them. And I'm curious, though, I've been listening and watching your stuff for 30 years, and I'm curious about your thoughts about reaching individuals in the audience and creating a meaningful experience for a single person. How do you do that? How do you do that in such a large environment?
I think the performance is not linked with the scale of the audience or the scale of the project. It's a very strange chemistry between two entities, the stage and the audience. And this chemistry works or doesn't for mysterious reasons. And, when for a concert and the concert I'm going to do for the tour I'm doing for North America is actually, really thought in this way, that the fact that actually I'm addressing I'm talking or I'm communicating with every individual in the audience, with what I'm doing, with what I'm playing, with the visuals. For me, the visuals is a very important part of my work on stage, and considering myself as a musician performing live electronic music, which is not that often these days, where most of the time you have pre-recorded music being played or just played on machines or whatever. The idea is actually to express the music even in a stronger way. The visual is very important. I always consider that specifically for electronic music, we can listen to music everywhere these days. In the street, at home, with our headphones. And if we go to a concert, it's also because we have the visual expectation of the artist we like. And then for this North American tour, the continuation of the European leg I finished a few weeks ago, I really wanted to explore visually how to express the way I'm doing music by creating architecture of sounds and creating perspective in a dynamic way. And also in a rhythmic way, in a more creating dynamics in the dynamics of the music, how to really express it visually. And then I went to this idea of designing a kind of system where you could have a kind of 3D without glasses. And I was really scared that this wouldn't work. And during the first rehearsals, we've been absolutely blown away by the result. And I must say that you have to see it live. You have to experience it live. In lots of cases, you go to YouTube and you understand more or less what the visual of the concert is all about. In that case, even if what you can watch on YouTube could be quite exciting, it has nothing to do with the experience live. So I'm so happy to be and so excited to do this North American tour with this project. Actually, it's the reason one of the reasons why I said, okay, this time in my world tour, I really would like to share this project with the US audience, especially.
Yeah, I want to go back briefly to Zoolook. I consider this one of the most important albums ever made, and I'm curious if you could reflect on the intent and challenge of making that album 33 years later.
It's interesting because when it's always I always consider that technology is dictating styles and not the reverse. It's because the violin has been invented that Vivaldi did what he did. It's because of the electric guitar existed like Chuck Berry or I don't know Eric Clapton or whether the blues existed in terms of sound. And the same with samplers. When the first Fairlight came along, I mean, the first sampler ever made, I mean, as a polyphonic machines and instruments, it changed the way we were able to. It changed for me the way I was able to do some music, and suddenly we could record the sound of your dog and making chords with the bark of your dog. It was quite. Even if it was not necessarily the purpose of the sampler, this was quite new, and Zoolook is based on this, and because of the possibility of the sampling, the idea went to do a kind of for me to achieve a vocal album, but not using vocals in the traditional way of having a singer with lyrics, but just stealing from languages from all over the world, from radio stations, from obscure Russian radio stations to African tribes to whatever actually, and using this as the raw material, the stone like a sculpture to create the beat, to create the bass, to create the melodies, all coming from samples, phonemes, samples, bits and pieces of words and languages.
Do you feel it has achieved a sort of level of importance and prominence since? Do you feel people understand how impactful that album was?
No, I always consider that I always doing music not thinking about the audience, with all the respect for people. I obviously, as a musician, you like when your music is understood or shared. But actually, I think for me, music is an addiction, and I think that actually artists or musicians, doing that all their lives, we are not doing this for fame, recognition, money, or on anything. It's more like because you cannot do psychologically anything else. And I think I could have become a rather decent architect or maybe a mediocre astrophysician, but I every morning I wake up with the same kind of greed and appetite for exploring sounds and developing some projects. So no, I didn't have this, but looking back when I listened to it, because I'm not listening to my music so much after it has been done, but it's funny you're talking about Zulu, because the last concert I've done at the Dead Sea, I played Technicolor, I played few parts of Zoolook, and I say, wow, when they're playing on stage, I think it's quite complex and quite interesting, because apart from the sound of the drums, this album is quite timeless.
You're a pioneer in another way too. Several artists, Wu-Tang Clan, have released single copy albums sold to just one person in the last 20 years, but you were the very first person to do it with music for supermarkets. Tell me what you were communicating back then about the value of music when you did that.
Yes, yes, I did that almost 30 years ago already. This was the idea of a kind of protest act against the music industry about the fact that suddenly CDs were distributed in department stores and being sold like toothpaste and soap, and it was the end of record stores such as Tower Records and all these great record shops where and it was the emotional link between the us musicians, artists, and amateurs of music and consumers, and also by doing this, I mean, it was considering, I mean, the artistic, the creative work as just, and the artists as content providers. And it was very premonitory of what happened later on with internet. And this is really what the concept was behind this, the fact that I say, okay, guys, I mean, an album, like a vinyl, is like a painting. It has the same kind of value. I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about what it means and what it is. The notion of something original. I mean, the vulnerability of an artist in front of a white page, whether he is a writer, a painter, a musician. I mean, it has a very specific value. It's what creates the identity of the country, of the continent, of time, and we have to be very careful. With that, and the creative process is quite fragile. And then we have to have empathy about this particular process, wherever we are. But on the other hand, music was existing before electricity and will exist after the internet. So it's not necessarily linked, but it was really a kind of premonitory, act against certain guys. Just having no really respect for music and for vinyl, because in times of vinyls, where we were presenting CDs as the grail, the ultimate quality, and we know that it was really crap, and that CD, even after 5 or 10 years, you couldn't play them anymore on the same on new machines, because with updates it was not. So it was the reverse. The reverse of what the industry was saying. You can still play a vinyl manufactured in the 50s. You cannot play anymore a vinyl released in the 70s, in the 90s, in lots of current players.
Now, most people aren't aware that music for supermarkets is completely linked to Zoolook. Could you describe what the music was for people who don't know what this mystical album is?
Yeah, it's quite close, because actually I did music for supermarket the same year, so I was dealing a lot with the Fairlight and with all these kind of sample and sound. So it was not at all based on vocals like Zoolook has been, but it was quite linked with a sampling approach of music. So in that sense, it's the part of the same family, I would say.
Do you think it could ever come out again?
No, because the whole idea was really that this album. I don't even have a copy, because the beauty of it was to really have one single copy and destroy the lacquers and the masters. So I knew who the owner was, but I know that the owner died, and I just lost the trace.
Pierre Schaefer remains a huge influence on you, and a lot of people don't know who Pierre Schaefer was, and I'm curious if you could talk about how we can hear Pierre Schaefer's influence on your current music, say Oxygene 3 or Electronica.
Pierre Schaefer is actually the grandfather of DJs. He's in the 1940s, in the first part of the last century. He did it all. He played on vinyls, 78 vinyls, and he was the first one to create loops on records, to speed it down or speed up to process the sounds, and also to go with the microphone outside and sampling the sound of recording the sound of the rain, of the wind, of the street, and making music with it. So it has been obviously this guy with Stockhausen changed the way we were going to approach music composition until now. By approaching music not only based on notes, based on solfeggio, but saying, okay, music is made of sounds and noises, and electronic music for me is like cooking. Cooking frequencies, beats, loops, textures, waveforms, and making music in a very organic way. In a sense, Pierre Schaefer approached music like Jackson Pollock approached painting. The same kind of thing. So it has been a major influence to all of us, and obviously to me, because he's been my teacher.
You surprised everyone that's in your fan base with an album called Radiophony just a few weeks ago. And tell me about the intent and challenge involved in that album.
This is actually a non-official album because I did what during the Electronica time and Oxygene 3 last year. I did the music for. I've been asked by the French public and TV station to compose the whole music for the station, and it was quite fun to do because I never did that. I mean, it's the news channel, TV and radio, and so I did the whole music for that, and they asked my management to release a few hundred copies of that for internally for this radio station. So I know that this album has been this music has been released as an album, but it's an unofficial release. It was based on the idea for the radio station just to have few samples of the music for to be available for some people around the radio station people.
Well, you had to create almost 100 variations of one track. That must have been quite something.
Yeah, it has been quite fun also to do. Doing a music for a news channel in days where the news are so dark, you have to be innovative, but you have also not to add kind of paranoia or tension or being too dramatic but also creating enough tension because it's a news channel. So it was quite interesting, and it was like composing, like really doing a soundtrack for a news script based on the script about news. What does it mean today? The music accompanying news, and actually when you listen to lots of news channels these days, I mean they sound really like the 90s, like in the 90s with lots of quite traditional type of ideas, and the whole project and the whole goal was to create something could be maybe more in phase with our times.
You have been an outspoken anti-piracy advocate for many, many years, but here we are in the age of streaming with such poor artist compensation. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are, about monetizing music in this era and how artists' rights are affected.
Actually, any system is neutral by definition. It's just the way we are using it. Streaming is a kind of modern internet version of a radio station, of radio. The problem is we have to create a serious, decent business model for artists. Because, in too many cases in streaming, streaming is generating lots of money for majors, but lots of authors and most of authors and creators of music, musicians, they just have the equivalent of a pizza without pepperoni by the end of the year. And that has to be addressed, it has to be adjusted, and it's, intellectual property and is not only linked to money, it's linked to what does it mean in terms of the identity of a country. We must not leave to our kids and future generations the fact that they wouldn't be able to get a decent living by doing music, doing books, or doing movies, because otherwise we won't have the next Quentin Tarantino, we won't have the next Coldplay or the next Beatles or the next Basquiat or whoever. It's a very important issue. We shouldn't consider streaming companies or big actors on the internet as our enemies as musicians, because most of the time these people are big music lovers, but we must at one moment sit around the same table and try to find a more decent balance between the money generated worldwide by music and the such ridiculous low amount that the artists have most of the time.